My girlfriend and best friend betrayed me for 2 years, but when an anonymous employee sent me the recordings, I discovered Blake had done this to all his friends' girlfriends, and they had a plan to destroy me. I'm 27 years old, I work in finance, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago still has me up at night wondering how I could have been so blind. Basically, my girlfriend of 2 years and my best friend since high school betrayed me in the most twisted way you can imagine, and the worst part is, they were playing me the whole time while I thought I was the problem. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I met Paige, it was like 3 years ago. I was 24 and had just gotten my current job at an investment firm. There was a coffee shop near my office where I'd go every morning. You know, one of those hipster places with art on the walls and baristas who take latte art very seriously. Paige worked there. She was 21 at the time, studying for a master's degree in marketing and working part-time to pay for her stuff. She was cute, like very natural, not much makeup, always with her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. The first time we talked was because she messed up my order and gave me almond milk coffee when I had asked for regular, and she was super embarrassed, but I told her it was no problem, that I actually liked trying new things. We talked for like 5 minutes that day, and after that I started going more often. Not just in the mornings, but sometimes in the afternoons too. It took like 3 months before I asked for her number. The truth is, I was a bit nervous because I thought maybe she was just that friendly with all the customers and I was misreading the signals. But when I finally worked up the nerve, she seemed genuinely excited. We started going out. Nothing too elaborate at first, like casual dinners and walks in the park, stuff like that. I liked that she didn't care that I came from a family with money. She never asked me for expensive things or acted different when she found out about my financial situation. That made me trust her. You know what I mean? Fast forward like 2 months after we officially started dating. I told Blake about Paige because, well, Blake was my best friend since I was 15. We met in high school. I was the nerd who came from a wealthy family, and he was the athletic type who was always at the gym. Sounds cliché, but we became friends because we both hated the same classes and had the same sarcastic sense of humor. By the time I introduced him to Paige, Blake already had his own gym, a small but well-equipped place he had opened like 2 years before. He also had a girlfriend, Catherine, who was an elementary school teacher and basically the sweetest person in the world. The thing is that from the moment Blake met Paige, he got very involved in our relationship. And when I say very, I mean he was always there. At first I thought he was just being a good friend. You know, trying to get to know the girl I was dating. He'd invite Catherine and me on double dates, organize group outings, that kind of stuff. Paige seemed to get along really well with him, which I liked because it was important to me that my girlfriend and best friend got along. Blake suggested to Paige that she sign up at his gym, offered her a special discount and everything. She accepted because she wanted to start working out and thought it was a good idea. Everything was going well for several months. Paige and I would see each other like 3 or 4 times a week. She kept working at the coffee shop while finishing her master's. I continued with my job in finance. On weekends, sometimes we'd go to Blake's gym together, or the 4 of us would go out, Blake, Catherine, Paige, and me. It was like having a normal, stable life, you know? I had never been in such a long relationship before, and I felt really good about everything. But then the weird stuff started. Paige began going to the gym more often, like 6 days a week. She told me Blake had designed a special training plan for her, and she needed to be consistent to see results. Okay, I thought. It's good that she's committed to her health. But then I noticed her schedules were strange. She'd go like 9 or 10 at night, when the gym was almost empty, according to her, because she preferred to train without so much noise. Blake supposedly stayed late to help her with personalized training sessions. Catherine never mentioned Blake coming home late, which now in retrospect I should have questioned more, but at the time I just thought maybe he went after dropping Catherine off at her place or something. The red flags started piling up, but I ignored them, or found explanations. Paige became super protective of her phone, always put it face down when we were together and took it even to the bathroom. When I asked her about it, she told me she'd had problems with a stalker ex, and now she was very careful about her privacy. Sounded reasonable, I guess. Blake started making strange comments about Paige, like she was making a lot of progress at the gym, that she had a lot of dedication. that it was impressive to see her work so hard. Nothing technically wrong, but there was something in his tone that made me uncomfortable. There was one afternoon, I think it was like a year and a half after Paige and I started dating, that I went to the coffee shop where she worked to surprise her with flowers. It was our anniversary. Well, technically, it was the next day. But I had an important meeting that day and wanted to celebrate early. When I got there, she wasn't at the main bar, but in the back part of the coffee shop with two of her work friends. They didn't see me come in because I was kind of hidden behind one of those big bookshelves those places have, and I heard Paige talking about me. At first, I didn't pay attention because I thought it would be something nice, but then I heard her say, literally, that dating me was convenient because I had money and good contacts for when she finished her master's. One of her friends asked if she loved me, and Paige laughed, like a mocking laugh, and I said something like, I was cute, but boring, that the real passion of her life was someone else, but that was complicated. I stood there, frozen with the flowers in my hand, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. One of the friends asked who this person was that she was so passionate about, and Paige lowered her voice, but I managed to hear her say Blake's name. She said Blake was intense, that he made her feel alive, that he was like an addiction, but the situation was delicate because he was my best friend and had a girlfriend. The other friend told her that sounded dangerous, and Paige just responded that they had it under control, that I didn't suspect anything. I left without them seeing me, threw the flowers in a trash can on the street, and walked like 20 blocks to my apartment. I couldn't process what I had heard. Part of me wanted to believe I had misunderstood, that maybe they were talking about someone else, but I knew perfectly well I had heard Blake's name. When I got home, I sat on the couch and stayed there for hours, trying to decide what to do. Did I confront Paige? Did I confront Blake? Did I ask both of them at the same time? Or was I being paranoid and exaggerating something that might have an innocent explanation? That night, Paige came to my apartment around 11. We had agreed she would sleep over. She acted completely normal, gave me a kiss, and asked how my day had been. I decided to confront her, not directly with what I had heard because I needed to see how she reacted without giving her time to prepare a story. I asked her about her training sessions with Blake, specifically about the late schedules. She told me it was when the gym was quieter and Blake could focus better on helping her. I asked if Catherine knew Blake stayed so late working with her, and Paige got a bit defensive, told me she didn't understand why I was asking such weird questions, that if I didn't trust her, so I asked her to show me her messages with Blake. The face she made, I can't even describe it. It was like a mix of panic and anger. She said, no, that was a violation of her privacy, that if I didn't trust her, then we had a bigger problem. I insisted, told her I just needed to see there was nothing strange, and then I dropped the subject. Paige flatly refused, grabbed her stuff, and left my apartment yelling that I was insecure and controlling. I stood there thinking maybe she was right, that I was being irrational, but I couldn't get out of my head what I had heard at the coffee shop. The next day, I went to find Blake at the gym. Catherine was there with him, which I wasn't expecting. I told them what I had heard. Well, an edited version where I didn't specifically mention that Paige had said Blake's name because I wanted to see their natural reaction. Blake acted super surprised and offended. Told me, how could I think something like that he would never do that he'd known me for years and Paige was just his client. Catherine defended me, saying Blake always came home at reasonable hours, and if he trained late with Paige, it was because it was his job, and he took his business very seriously. They made me feel like I was crazy, like I had invented everything in my head. Blake put his hand on my shoulder and told me maybe work stress was affecting me, that I should consider taking a vacation. I apologized to both of them and left feeling completely confused. I started questioning everything, thinking maybe I had misinterpreted what I heard at the coffee shop, that my mind had filled in the gaps with my own insecurities. Paige called me that night and we had a long conversation where she assured me she loved me, that she would never cheat on me, that she understood relationships require trust. She made me feel guilty for having doubted her. And like an idiot, I believed her. Well, I didn't completely believe her, but I wanted to believe her. You know what I mean? The next few weeks were strange. Paige became super affectionate, like more than normal. She'd text me all day, bring me coffee to the office, plan elaborate dates. Blake also acted different, more distant. He stopped inviting us to group outings, and when I saw him in person, the conversations were cordial but superficial. I thought maybe he was upset about my accusations and needed space, which was fair. But I couldn't let go of my suspicions completely. I started paying more attention to details. I noticed Paige still went to the gym at strange hours and always came back with wet hair, like she had just showered, but her gym clothes didn't seem very sweaty. Once I checked her gym bag while she was in the shower at my apartment and found 2 cell phones, her normal iPhone and a cheap Android I had never seen. When I asked her about it later, she told me it was a work phone she used to communicate with clients from her professional marketing practice, that her university required students to have separate lines for that. It sounded elaborate but possible. The straw that broke the camel's back came in a totally unexpected way. I got a direct message on Instagram from a girl named Heather who worked with Paige at the coffee shop. The message said something like she needed to talk to me about something important related to Paige, that she didn't know if she should get involved, but her conscience wouldn't let her stay silent. We agreed to meet at a Starbucks far from where we both lived, basically on neutral territory. Heather arrived with a folder full of screenshots. She showed me conversations she had seen on Paige's phone when she left it on the table in the employee break area at the coffee shop. It turned out Paige had been sharing her location in real time with Blake through an app, and Heather had noticed that on days Paige said she had meetings with professors or group study sessions, her location showed she was at Blake's gym, but not in the main gym area, but at a specific address that Heather had Googled. And that corresponded to the private apartment Blake had in the same building as the gym, like a small loft on the 2nd floor. She also showed me screenshots where Paige had been coordinating schedules with Blake, making sure Catherine wasn't around, planning their encounters in great detail. The messages were explicit, not sexually but emotionally. Paige told Blake things like she hated having to pretend they were just friends, that she counted the days until she could be alone with him, that I was just an obligation, but he was her choice. Blake responded with equally intense messages, telling her it was worth the wait, that soon they'd find a way to be together without complications. I felt physically sick reading all that. Heather told me she had been debating for weeks whether to tell me or not, that Paige was technically her co-worker and she didn't want to cause drama, but she thought I deserved to know the truth. I asked her why Paige had left her phone unlocked, where others could see, and Heather told me Paige was careless with those things at work, that sometimes she left her phone on the table while serving customers and notifications appeared on the lock screen with full message previews. I spent the next few days collecting more evidence because part of me still needed absolute confirmation before blowing everything up. I hired a private investigator, which sounds dramatic, but I have friends in finance who had gone through complicated divorces, and they recommended someone reliable. The investigator got footage from the security cameras of the building where Blake's gym was. He showed me videos dated from the last 6 months, where Paige entered the building through the back door late at night, went up to the 2nd floor using her own key, and didn't come out until 2 or 3 hours later. Sometimes you could see Blake go up a few minutes after her. Other times he was already upstairs when she arrived. But what really destroyed me was a specific video, where you could see Paige and Blake in the gym parking lot around 2 in the morning. They were leaning on Blake's car, and he was hugging her, like an intimate hug where she had her head on his chest, and he was caressing her hair. They stayed like that for several minutes, and then Blake gave her a kiss on the forehead before she got in her car. It wasn't just physical. There was an emotional intimacy there that hurt more than anything explicitly sexual. But I confronted Paige one night when she came to my apartment. I showed her some of the screenshots Heather had given me. Not all of them, because I wanted to see how much she'd admit without pressure. Paige tried to deny everything at first, told me those messages were taken out of context, that Blake and she were just good friends, and I was jealous without reason. When I showed her the videos from the security cameras, her face completely changed. She stopped denying and instead went into offensive mode, yelled at me that I never understood her, that I was always working and didn't pay attention to her, that Blake made her feel valued. I told her to leave my apartment and that I didn't want to see her again. She tried to hug me and tell me she was sorry, that we could fix things, but I just wanted her to leave. I blocked her everywhere, phone, social media, everything. I also blocked Blake without confronting him directly, because honestly, I didn't trust myself to have that conversation without becoming violent. I thought that was the end of the story. I thought with time I'd get over it and move on. But 2 weeks later, I received an anonymous email. The sender identified themselves only as someone who worked at Blake's gym and who had witnessed everything. The email included a huge compressed file with more evidence than I had collected on my own. There were audio recordings of conversations between Blake and Paige in his loft where they specifically discussed how to manipulate me. Blake gave Paige advice on what to tell me, how to make me feel guilty if I questioned anything, how to use my money and connections while they maintained their relationship in secret. In one recording, Blake told Paige that I was easy to manipulate because I came from money and was used to people being nice to me out of interest. So I never questioned the intentions of people close to me. But the most disturbing thing was, there was evidence that Blake had been obsessed with Paige from the moment I introduced her to him. The email included screenshots of Blake's private notes where he wrote about Paige, describing her in super creepy ways, saying he needed to have her, that I didn't deserve her. Apparently, Blake had started reaching out to Paige on Instagram even before I officially introduced them. He had been commenting on her photos and sending her direct messages complimenting her. And here comes the part that I still have trouble processing. The email also included anonymous testimonies from other people who knew Blake, including a guy named Cameron who was a trainer at the gym. Cameron wrote that Blake had done this before, that he had a pattern of becoming obsessed with his friends' girlfriends, approaching them under the pretext of friendship or work, and then systematically sabotaging the relationships while positioning himself as the confidant and eventual lover. There were names of at least 3 guys who had been Blake's friends and who had lost their girlfriends the same way. Blake apparently perfected his tactics each time, learning from his previous mistakes. What Blake did was offer gym memberships to his friends' girlfriends, then design workout routines that required personalized sessions at odd hours, create situations where he was the only one available to help them, make them feel special and understood in ways their boyfriends supposedly didn't. Cameron said he had seen this pattern so many times that when he saw me arrive with Paige at the gym, he knew exactly what was going to happen, but he hadn't told me anything, because the previous times he had tried to warn others, they had accused him of being jealous or causing drama without evidence. The email explained that the reason Cameron finally decided to compile all this evidence and send it to me was because Blake had started talking about his next target, the new girlfriend of another friend from the gym, and Cameron couldn't stay silent again. He wrote specifically that he felt he owed me an apology for not warning me earlier and hoped the evidence would help me close that chapter and also warn others. I called Catherine. Yes, Blake's girlfriend. Or, well, ex-girlfriend by that point, because when I told her everything and showed her the evidence, she also broke up with Blake immediately. Catherine told me she never suspected anything because Blake always came home at normal hours and showed her the gym entry and exit logs that supposedly proved he was working. It turned out Blake had been manipulating those records, basically falsifying timestamps to make it look like he left earlier than he actually did. I haven't spoken to Blake or Paige again since all this. I blocked all possible forms of contact and made it very clear to our mutual friends that I didn't want to know anything about them. Some friends took my side, others just distanced themselves from all the drama, which I understand. Catherine and I became friends in a weird way. Both being victims of the same kind of betrayal gave us something in common, although our friendship is more cordial and occasional check-ins to make sure we're both okay. Last week, I found out from a friend that Paige and Blake are officially together now, living in Blake's apartment above the gym. I don't know how they feel about it, if they feel guilty or if they justified their behavior somehow. Honestly, I don't care anymore. What I do care about is that I lost 2 years of my life with someone who saw me as a convenience, and I lost a friendship of over 10 years with someone who turned out to be a manipulative sociopath. I'm in therapy now, trying to process everything and rebuild my ability to trust people. My therapist says what Blake did has a name, something like predatory friendship or systematic manipulation, where someone infiltrates your life specifically to destroy it from the inside. It's disturbing to think that during all those years, Blake was probably waiting for the perfect opportunity to do exactly what he did, that our entire friendship was a lie designed to eventually betray me. The only positive thing I got out of all this is that now I know how to recognize the signs. I know my instinct wasn't wrong that afternoon at the coffee shop when I heard Paige, and I know that when something feels wrong, it probably is, even if the people involved make you feel like you're crazy. Cameron sent me a message a few days ago thanking me for exposing Blake because apparently several of the ex-friends Blake had betrayed before are talking to each other and considering taking legal action or at least publicly warning about his behavior. I don't know if anything will come of that, but it makes me feel a little better knowing maybe this will prevent Blake from doing the same thing to someone else.